Professor Olivera-La Rosa has a double affiliation. He is a full professor in the Universidad Católica Amigó in Colombia, and he also works as a researcher at the Universidad de las Islas Baleares, where he obtained his PhD. And he is doing very nice works in social psychology, which I will try to summarize by saying that his main concern is to see how the impression of creepiness as perceived stimulate a judgment, maybe implicit judgment of creepiness in terms of moral judgment. I'm very grateful that you're here, and please, the floor is yours.
Well, thanks, Marco, for the invitation. It's an honor to be part of this talk, so I'm going to start. Let's see, I'm going to share. Okay, I hope you're seeing the same thing that I am seeing. Well, as Marco said...
can you please, if you can try to use the full screen, I think we can see it.
Okay, oh yeah, right now is the full screen, perfect. Well, today's talk is about face perception in dating apps, so I hope you enjoy this talk and you can learn some interesting things. Well, today, more than ever, we are actually our face. I think this meeting is actually a perfect example of facial interaction. So a crucial question these days is how this facial scanner works in the time of Tinder, and actually I will say the times of Zoom. Well, today I'm going to talk about three hypotheses. My main hypothesis is that profile pictures that apply unnatural photo filters might facilitate social avoidance rather than social desirability. For me, this is the main hypothesis and the one that I have researched more extensively. So I'm going to try to bring very detailed information about this hypothesis. I'm also planning to present two additional hypotheses. The second one is that social judgment extracted from faces should color how non-face information about a person is processed. This is my second hypothesis. And the third hypothesis is that Tinder functions as a biological market. I'm going to explain why we consider that this analogy is especially useful in Tinder context. Finally, I'm going to outline some potential future directions that I think can be very useful in this research field. So, why Tinder? No, Tinder, you will say maybe, well, he likes Tinder, he don't like Tinder. I think Tinder is a new scenario. Tinder is right now the most famous, the most important dating app around the world, with an estimate of more than 60 million users, which is a lot of people. So we can say that how people meet potential dating partners has changed due to the increasing usage of these online dating apps. A crucial point is that Tinder functions as a virtual intermediary that enables face-to-face encounters with strangers. This is very important. And these face-to-face encounters are based on rapid evaluations of mostly visual and sometimes a little textual material. So we can actually say that Tinder works as a big online catalog. No, I think this is a very useful analogy. Well, for those who are not familiarized with the Tinder interface, this is how the Tinder interface looks. You see a picture, and if you like the picture, you swipe right. And if you don't like the picture, you swipe left. It's actually pretty easy. And you normally do this process in a very rapid manner. Okay, a crucial feature of Tinder is that the fact that several different types of potential dating partners looking either for casual sex or for serious relationship might initiate contact through Tinder is really relevant for investigating the psychological drivers underlying these sweeping decisions. This is one of my main motivations behind Tinder, the study of Tinder since a psychological perspective. As we said, the Tinder interface emphasizes photos and rapid judgments, based on limited cues, which are mainly based on physical attractiveness, to make sweeping decisions. So I insist with this point. Tinder emphasizes pictures and emphasizes rapid judgments. The fact that one knows little about who one is dating, only some pictures, which sometimes are fake pictures, with little textual material, together with this tendency of online post-match encounters to happen in intimate context, which actually might have risky consequences, make Tinder an ambiguous and then potentially dangerous social context. This is very important. This is why I underline this latest phrase. Ambiguous and potentially dangerous social context. So let's go to our first hypothesis. My first hypothesis is that profile pictures, like the one that we are seeing in this image, that apply unnatural photo filters might trigger social avoidance rather than social desirability. We are going to discuss the Uncanny Valley in the context of this perceptual mechanism. Well, you probably know that we are extremely good, but really, really good at detecting faces, even when there are no faces. No, if we see the clouds, right now I can see the cloud from my desktop, and if I see the clouds, it's very easy for me to see faces. Of course, I know that these are the clouds and there are no faces in the sky, but it is easy for us to see faces. We are kind of born with a PhD in detecting faces, even when there are no faces. For instance, if you see the pictures, it is very easy not to see faces in these inanimate objects. Again, of course, we know that these are no faces, but even knowing that these are inanimate objects, it's very difficult not to see eyes, to see mouths, and to see the whole face pattern in this object. So this is something pretty automatic, something that we do very easy, that is very easy for us. In the social context, we can say that the face is a crucial source of social information. It's a crucial source of social information. So this means that people draw multiple social inference from minimal facial cues about a person. This is important. These social inferences are made from minimal facial cues. As I said, this is a largely automatic process. When I say automatic, I mean that this process is fast and or unintentional and or unconscious and or efficient. So remember that the face is a source of social information and that this mechanism is largely automatic. Social judgments, as you probably know, are present in everyday life, especially when the face are involved. If we see a face, we make a social judgment. So this means that each time that we perceive a face, we automatically produce multiple social inference. This is what I call the facial scanner. For me, the facial scanner is this analogy that I think works very good in the context of facial perception and first impressions. For instance, judgment of trustworthiness is just a matter of milliseconds, maybe 33 or 100 milliseconds, which is extremely rapid time, extremely rapid period of time. You see a face, you make a judgment. You see a face, you make a judgment, face, judgment. This is how it works. A crucial rule of social perception, especially if you understand social perception since the viewpoint of implicit social perception and from an evolutionary framework, is that ambiguity means danger in the social context. We can say, based on the literature, that social perception functions according to the smoke detector principle. This means that psychological mechanisms err on the side of caution to minimize false positive errors at the expense of increasing false negative errors. So, from an evolutionary perspective, it is crucial to detect diagnostic signals that reveal whether an unfamiliar target is an enemy or a friend. I think the second picture, the picture at the bottom of the slide, can show you how this works. If you see this guy, you have two options. You can run or you can approach. So according to the smoke detector principle, it is better to run because you have more to lose than to win. Well, you probably know this thing, but the human visual system has acquired an expertise and heightened sensitivity in discriminating facial features. This perceptual process appears to be highly automatic, facilitating that any incongruent, weird, different, at odd facial feature activates our hypersensitive perceptual alarm system. So this means that if we see that something is wrong, something is weird, this might signal that something is wrong not only with the perceptual pattern, but with the person. So, would you like to drink a coffee with this guy? I wouldn't, definitely, that's for sure. Would you like to date this girl? Did you see the face? Okay, welcome to the Uncanny Valley. I always think that the best way to understand the Uncanny Valley is by feeling it. I probably guess that if you see this picture, you will feel that there's something wrong with these dolls, with these androids. Maybe not with a Scarlett Johansson, but with a Scarlett Johansson copy, you feel that there's something wrong, something different, something at odd, something creepy, something that is not in the right place. Okay, the Uncanny Valley hypothesis states that those entities, which look quite close to being human, but are actually not completely human, can produce negative feelings in an observer. This feeling is the uncanny feeling. So entities such as android, sex toys, CGI characters, mannequins, clowns, or even Botox victims, like the ones that you are seeing in this slide, have been previously linked to the uncanny feeling. So I think a picture is worth 1,000 words. Again, another example, another perfect example that a picture is worth 1,000 words. You see this picture, this image, and you feel that there's something wrong with it. There's something that is not in the right place. So we can say that this figure illustrates how the Uncanny Valley works in its original conception. You see that there's a non-linear relationship between human likeness and emotional reaction. So these pictures are pretty human, but are not exactly human, especially the one at the bottom of the slide. So this picture shows that there's a non-linear relationship between human likeness and emotional reaction. This is the basic Uncanny Valley. Well, my friend Michael Jackson here. Let's talk a little bit about the science of creepiness, which I found extremely interesting. I don't know if that makes me a creepy guy, I hope not, but I find creepiness is an extremely interesting field, especially if we want to understand several mechanisms of social perception. So, some studies actually suggest that the perception of weird, deviant, ambiguous facial features are implicitly interpreted as cues of moral ambiguity, which means different, dubious, or bad moral character. In the last years, we found some evidence suggesting the existence of a wrong outside, wrong inside moral heuristic, which is the main argument, the main theme underlying my research last year. Okay, I'm going to review some of my latest research. The first one in the context of the Uncanny Valley was from 2019 with a good friend, Javier Villacampa. This was a pretty exploratory study, so a further step in this research. However, we found that in this exploratory study, using implicit measures, we found that android faces, as the one that you are seeing here, rated as uncanny, were more strongly associated with moral disgust than with fear. It was our first finding in the context of the Uncanny Valley. I repeat, this was a pre-exploratory study, so we thought that we need more studies in order to have a clearer picture of how the uncanny feeling works in the social context. Okay, our second study, in the second study, we use both implicit and explicit measures to study whether real uncanny faces by faces of Botox people and very ugly people will be linked with the perceptions of bad moral character and social avoidance. Okay, a crucial aspect of this research, at least for me, was that I really wanted to use real faces. I know that a lot of several research in the Uncanny Valley is based on morphing artificial faces, and I understand why this is so popular, because of course it's easier for you as an experimenter to control all the features. However, my feeling is that the uncanny feeling was different when we see real faces, because our perception, our conceptual apparatus is much more tuned for real faces, faces that we can actually see in the street. So it was a crucial aspect of the research to use these real uncanny faces. It was actually difficult to find this kind of faces, but we try to emphasize in order to reach the ecological validity, reach an ecological value. So the main question underlying this research was if the perception that something is wrong in a person's face works as an automatic signal that something is wrong with that person's morality. That was the main question underlying the research, and actually all the researchers. So we found that compared to aesthetically neutral faces, those faces perceived as uncanny were evaluated as less socially desirable and more morally different. This was our main finding. We also found that implicit measures show that uncanny faces were more strongly associated with negative aesthetic evaluations of ugliness, than with negative moral evaluations of moral disgust. So I present here some of the stimuli that we use in the research. You can see that actually the ugly people were extremely ugly and very difficult to find, because these are not easy stimuli to find. Well, altogether, the result suggests that ugliness might play a crucial role in social judgments toward uncanny faces. This was our second study. Okay. After that, we decided to conduct a third study based on this guy. Well, if you don't know this guy, this guy is the Joker. He's a little bit complicated, so it's not a very sociable guy, but he inspired our third study on the uncanny feeling. We also based this study on an implicit rule of social perception, which is that emotional unpredictability signal to observers that an individual is dangerous and trigger social avoidance. Well, we decided to study affective deviance because affective deviance, but by definition, are outside normative expectations, meaning that they are difficult to read emotionally and, of course, because of that, unpredictable behaviorally. So in this research, this third study, we decided to explore social judgments of affective deviance in young offenders with collusion emotional traits, which is actually a very difficult sample to study, believe me. Well, I can show you the experimental manipulations we use for conditions. You can see the congruent conditions at the bottom of the slide, and you can see you can see the congruent conditions at the top of the slide and the incongruent conditions at the bottom of the figure. Each participant was assigned to one of the four conditions and was asked to rate this target in different social dimensions. As you can see, it seems that the target is actually watching a slideshow of this image, but it was part of the experimental manipulation. So what we found that affective deviants were rated as creepier and less trustworthy, and also more likely to have bad moral character than targets who display normative affect. This one, so we found support for one of our main hypotheses. In an interesting finding, we found that creepiness ratings correlate with judgment of bad moral character, which was pretty interesting for me, suggesting that this emotional response, the uncanny feeling, might be involved in moral evaluation. So we actually found some data supporting the wrong outside, wrong inside moral evaluation. Altogether, these findings indicate that deviant affective displays produce a variety of negative social judgment, which causes an emotional trait playing a role in this social cognitive theory. So this was a pretty interesting and actually difficult research, but I was really satisfied with the main results because they were in the same line that previous research on the uncanny feeling and its moral connotations. So altogether, the research that I presented here suggests that Tinder profile pictures that apply these unnatural photo filters actually facilitate social avoidance rather than social desirability, especially at early stages of social interaction, especially in the context of first impression. Okay, let's briefly talk about our second hypothesis. I know this is a pretty interesting Tinder profile. Our second hypothesis is that social judgment extracted from faces should color how non-face information about a person is processed. Well, we are going to talk about how this perceptual heuristic bias how we process information. And I know, for example, this kind of talks when we just see our face, this is again a perfect example of this hypothesis. Okay, a face is worth 1,000 words. I just said that, but I think this is extremely useful claim in the context of social perception. How we interpret information largely depends on how we perceive the person on the other side of the screen. Again, I say this is not only applied to Tinder or to online dating, but also to Zoom or other types of virtual interaction. As I said, the formation of first impressions is actually an automatic process. It's a largely automatic process. And it's based, and this is very important, it's based on whatever evaluative information is available. This is a crucial feature of the formation of first impression. Another crucial feature of formation of first impression is that personality inference extracted from facial appearance, from faces, are extremely sensitive to attractiveness. So attractiveness is actually a crucial variable in the context of social perception and in the context of first impression. You probably are familiarized or not, I don't know, with some heuristics, some social heuristics based on aesthetic appearance, such as the what is beautiful is good stereotype, or the what is ugly or weird is bad stereotype, which I really like because, as I said, maybe I'm a little bit weird. So these heuristics bias how we read people. And this is extremely important to know because I know this is not what we like to listen. It's maybe not the most, the greatest conclusion in the world, but it doesn't matter that it is not true. So we need to approach this heuristic in a descriptive way to understand how they actually work in real life. Okay, let's see a little bit more about the what is ugly or weird is bad heuristic. Some research actually suggests that most often an attractiveness is a disadvantage more than attractiveness is an advantage in several domains of social judgment. Well, what means this research? This means that an attractive face faces elicit a stronger effect on social judgment than attractive faces. So there's a negative bias in social perception. Some research, which I found really interesting, suggests that there is a disfigure or anomalous is bad stereotype, wherein people attribute negative social attributes to individuals with facial anomalies. You can imagine that this is a serious stereotype because it might have very serious implications. For instance, if you see the picture in the slide, you can see how this stereotype might impact social judgment of different types of people which have this kind of facial anomaly. Okay, this was a brief overview of how this heuristic might impact social evaluations. So we can say that in the context of Tinder, if a profile picture is rated as extremely positive or extremely negative, it might bias the evaluation of the profile description, the famous "about me" biographical taglines, or might directly halt the acquisition of any further information about a potential date. Well, you can see, for instance, in the profile picture, it might help you understand what I am saying. So, as a result, we predict that information depicted in the profile description will only be relevant for sweeping decisions when first impressions are weak. So this is the main conclusion of the second hypothesis. Again, I say that this profile description will only be relevant for sweeping decisions when first impressions are weak. Okay, let's see our third hypothesis is that Tinder functions as a biological market. So this means that Tinder users need not to demonstrate that they are the best in Tinder. They just need to demonstrate that they are better than other Tinder users, which is not difficult actually. They have to demonstrate that they are better because in a biological market, the value is based on competition, in a biological market is based on relative rather than absolute value. And this is a crucial and very important characteristic if we try to understand how Tinder works in the context of mating. For instance, we can say that buyers in a biological market assess partners in an integrated manner, which means that Tinder users can make up for a lack of attractiveness by being attractive in other ways. This is a crucial characteristic of how a biological market works. Okay, let's see our friend Rodolfo. I guess that you don't understand Spanish, so I'm going to try to translate this. He said that he had to open Tinder because he was hospitalized for a while. He lost contact with all the exterior world. Thanks God, wasn't nothing serious. He got, I was intoxicated, eating rice with milk. Luckily, they were able to extract the rice. Now I'm looking for someone to extract my milk. This is our friend Rodolfo. He used different means in order to attract. Maybe not the best means, but he's trying to call the attention in some way. I don't know if this is a real profile or not, that's for sure. Okay, we are that in addition to judgment of attractiveness, moral character is a very good candidate for an evaluative dimension underlying judgments of social desirability, especially in the context of mate selection. And therefore, a key part of the sweeping decision and post-match decision process. This is one of our main arguments, that Tinder is not just about attractiveness, but that moral character might be as important as attractiveness. Another point, important conclusion, I'm going to show why, is that the perceived value of the different qualities evaluated will differ between sex. This means that evaluation of physical attractiveness will be more important for men than for women. while evaluations of moral character will be more important for women than for men. We actually conducted a research on this topic some years ago. This was a cross-cultural study with Tinder profile pictures collected from Colombia and from the US. We found that across both countries, women, relative to men, were more likely to use visual means in order to attract men to right side, while men were more likely than women to include a verbal profile description and to include information about their color major, which was actually kind of surprising. But it was an interesting research because we used different samples from different countries, so we can have a big picture of how this actually works, a bigger picture. Okay, some preliminary conclusions before passing to future studies. Based on this research, we can say that the science of online dating suggests that cognitive heuristics related with facial processing bias how we read potential dating partners. Another conclusion is that Tinder works as a biological market, which means that users, as Rodolfo, can make up for a lack of attractiveness by being attractive in other ways. For instance, using the verbal profile description. Well, maybe the most important conclusion, at least for me, is that profile pictures that apply unnatural photo filters might activate our hypersensitive perceptual system, facilitating social avoidance rather than social desirability. We also found some evidence suggesting the existence of a grown outside, grown inside moral heuristic. So this evidence suggests that facial ambiguity bias moral inference. Specifically, the perception that something is wrong in a person's face works as an automatic signal that something is wrong with that person's morality. Okay, let's check some future studies that we are working on. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, I'm sure that our life become different. So we started a research on social perception in the time of COVID-19. Our first study was conducted pretty early. It was, I think, April or something like that at the beginning of the pandemic. And we conducted this study in Spanish-speaking countries. And we found that mask wearers were perceived to be more trustworthy and more socially desirable, but also more likely to be perceived as ill, which was kind of like a surprising finding. And then we conducted a second study, which is under review. This study was conducted in English-speaking countries, and we found a main effect of mask untrustworthiness, again, but also significant interaction with political orientation, which was actually an interesting addition to this second study. We tried to study how political interaction interact with face perception of mask wearers. This significant interaction with political orientation showed that conservatives found masked faces less trustworthy than the liberals. So there was a complementary finding. Okay, right now we are designing a third study. We are trying to study this hypothesis. The main hypothesis is that in the context of COVID-19, familiar people will be implicitly perceived as less likely to be a source of contagion than unfamiliar people. So I get that you probably feel this very close to reality because we all meet familiar people during the pandemic and the quarantine. And I'm trying to add some empirical evidence to this heuristic. Okay, a second project is on the Uncanny Valley of facial filters. Well, these are two examples of the stimuli that we are testing. Our main hypothesis is that there's a non-linear relationship between the strength of the filter, and which I mean for strength is how natural the filter looks, and perception of social desirability. This is a second research. Okay, and finally, we are working in an androgyny project testing this run outside, run inside heuristic in the context of androgeny perception. Our main hypothesis is that gender ambiguity perceived in people with androgynous appearance will generate categorical discrepancies related with cognitive dissonance and perceptual influency, facilitating the occurrence of the uncanny feeling and the corresponding inference of weird, different morality and also social rejection. So this is a research which I'm very enthusiastic about. I hope to conduct the research in the next month. So I hope to have some preliminary findings pretty soon. I hope so, at least. Okay, well, that's it. I think this was pretty rapid, pretty quick.